Hi, everyone. Lisa Haven here. Well, something has been forgotten that should not be forgotten. And in today's report, I intend to expose it. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the cozy merging relationship between the mainstream media, the CIA, the FBI, and the entire intelligence community, or at least divisions within the intelligence community, not all of them. But either way, this relationship has been going on since the early 1950s, and today is really blowing up into a monster that is going to lead the United States of America into complete control by authoritarian sources if we don't start speaking out against it and exposing it. And to be honest with you, it is getting much, much worse in our mainstream media, to the point where they've hired many people within the intelligence community in these mainstream media outlets. It's now in our face. But let me show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. And I want to start here with Project Mockingbird. Many of you are already well aware of this, so I'm just going to skip very briefly on it for those who don't know. But in the early 1950s, 1960s, this project was exposed. And I'm going to link it in the description box below. But what is it? Operation Mockingbird is a large-scale program in the United States with the CIA that began in the early 1950s and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. It also funded student and cultural organizations and magazine as a front. Okay, so this is a cozy relationship from the 1950s between the mainstream media and the CIA. In my opinion, they said this whole project has been closed down, and I'm sure that one has. But seeing where the mainstream media is at today and how many people are former CIA, FBI, or intelligence community people who now work at the mainstream media tells me that there's a lot more going on. Now, for starters, I want to start with this little article on the New York Times, and I brought this up already on restrictedrepublic.com. By the way, if you're not on Restricted Public, you guys got to get there. Justice Knight and myself share this platform here, and we've got massive information on stuff that I'm not going to talk about here. And right now, you can get it for $29 off for an entire year using the code LOCKDOWN. But you want the nitty and gritty truth, you got to get on over to Restricted Republic. I can't stress that enough because I talk about a lot of this stuff there in detail. All right, so with that, let's start with this New York Times article. Now, I wanted to bring this piece up because I think it's the icing on the cake of where we are headed in the very near future. But here it is. New York Times, don't go down the rabbit hole. Critical thinking, as we're taught to do it, right, is not helping the fight against misinformation. What is the New York Times saying here? They're saying, don't critically think. It's bad for you. So instead of critically thinking, they want you to go on the internet and Google and Wikipedia and look up things, because they're more reliable than our own brains, right? Or our own critical thinking. But here's what they say in the article that I want to point out, and I'm heading somewhere with this information. We're taught that in order to protect ourselves from bad information, we need to deeply engage with the stuff that washes up in front of us. Ms. Caulfield told me recently, he suggested that the dominant mode for the media literacy, if kids get taught any at all, is that you'll get imperfect information and then use reasoning to fix it somehow. But in reality, that strategy can completely backfire. In other words, resist the lure of rabbit holes in part by reimagining media literacy for the internet hellscape we occupy. And it goes on to give an example of this using Robert F. Kennedy, calling him an anti-vax person and someone who, believes certain things that they don't necessarily agree with. But they said in 15 seconds, they were able to navigate on Wikipedia and scroll through basically your Google search engine and find out that he's a conspiracy theorist and anti-vaxxist. So immediately, because he's anti-vaccine and a conspiracy theorist, he's shut off the internet, and you should listen to what Google and Wikipedia tell you. That is the propaganda, because New York Times is a propaganda outlet, and I'm going to show you in just a moment. But they say, instead of using your critical thinking, imagine this. Instead of using your brain to think for yourself about Robert Kennedy, right? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and what he believes in regards to anti-vax, instead of maybe looking up why he believes that or why he doesn't, they're just telling you, listen to Google, listen to Wikipedia, and follow what they say. Why would the New York Times do that? And I got to thinking. In other words, the New York Times is saying they're the sole authority. The mainstream media should be listened to, and Google and Wikipedia above and beyond anyone else. That's what they're saying in that article. So listen to us, don't think for yourself. This is the kind of mentality that you get from people like Mao, Hitler, all your tyrants, Lenin, all of them through the years. That's the same kind of rhetoric they were spouting. But then I found this information, and this is an older article, right? But it really hits home. This is from 2007. But I wanted to bring it back up. The CIA and even the Vatican edit Wikipedia entries. This is a U.S. hacker's homemade program he used to pinpoint the origins of who all is making the edit. And a lot of the edits came from the CIA and the Vatican. Here's another article, and this is on Reuters.com. The CIA, the FBI, computers used for Wikipedia edits. Oh, people using, and again, this is 2007, people are using the CIA and FBI computers to have edit entries in the online encyclopedia Wikipedia on topics including all of these. And I guarantee you, we're way beyond 2007. If you were to update and relook into this, it would be a whole slew of other articles. Maybe that's why this New York Times article tells you don't think for yourself and go down the rabbit hole of studying and looking things up. Instead, trust Wikipedia and Google. And we all know about Google, right? Everybody knows about Google, that they purposefully put what they want you to see at the top of the search engine. Easy. Plug in the word Trump and everything will come up negative. Plug in the word Biden and everything positive comes up. Ta-da! I don't even have to show you guys that one because you know what I'm talking about. But again, so New York Times, mainstream media says go to them and go to Wikipedia and go to Google. Well, I've already proven that Wikipedia is manipulated by CIA, FBI, Vatican, these kinds of people. We're showing you articles that provide that just might be the case, right? But now let's also talk about mainstream media. Who are they to be giving us source information? Are they in bed with anybody? Because we already know about Project Mockingbird, where in the 1950s, the CIA was working with the mainstream media. But what about today? We'll take a look at this article here. And this is on The Guardian. TheGuardian.com. Correspondence and collusion between the New York Times and the CIA. Oh, this is August 2012. So here's an article from 2012 by Glenn Greenwald that shows there's this loving relationship between the New York Times and the CIA. So the New York Times, in bed with the CIA, tells us to listen to Wikipedia, who, according to reports, the CIA is manipulating that too. And the Google search engine, of course. Why? Are they all working together? Well, here's this article, and it goes on to show this. These are emails that were obtained back in 2012 by Judicial Watch, showing evidence of at least an email correspondence between CIA spokesperson Maria Harf, and this is at that time, and between Mark Mazzetti, who worked for, well, you got it, the New York Times. Here's an actual email feed, and you can read it on your own, but here's another one here where from Mark to Marie, Mark says, oh, but this information didn't come from me. So don't even worry about sharing this information. Just keep it under the radar. In other words, okay, the standard role played by established journalists and the corruption that pervades it. Here we have a New York Times reporter who covers the CIA colluding with its own spokesperson to plan for the fallout from the reporting by his own newspaper. Beyond this, that a New York Times journalist ostensibly devoted to bringing transparency to government institutions is pleading with the CIA spokesperson of all people to conceal the actions and to delete the evidence of collusion that is so richly symbolic. But hey, let's go listen to the CIA or AKA New York Times, wherever they're getting in their information from. But then we also have an actual admission from the New York Times themselves about it. Now, I had to go back to 1977 to find this article. But the CIA admits back in 1977 that they have established many links to journalists in the US and abroad, that the CIA has done this. And you can see the little newspaper clipping here in the lower right-hand corner. That's a little wider. You can see the article there. But they actually admit in that little section, right, that there is hundreds of individuals, right, who are working with the CIA, that the mainstream media is working with the CIA, and they go out to list even, I believe it was ABC, right? Wow. This is back when the New York Times was actually worth a lick in 1977, when they exposed the CIA working with journalists. Now it seems that they're working together, right? Isn't this amazing? Then I have this article here. And this is by Carl Bernstein. This was, let me read his bio here. After leaving the Washington Post in 1977, he spent 6 months looking at the relationship of the CIA and the press during the Cold Wars. His 25,000-word cover story, published in the Rolling Stones on October 20th, 1977, is printed below. And here's his title of it: How America's Most Powerful News Media Worked Hand in Glove with the CIA, and Why the Church Committee Covered It Up. Here's him literally exposing it all, right? And this is back. Imagine what's happening today in 1953. Imagine what's happening right now. Right? And I'm going to get into that. But he's one of 400 American journalists who in the past 25 years have secretly carried out assignments for the CIA, according to documents on file at the CIA headquarters. Some of these journalists' relationship with the agency were tactic, some were explicit. There was cooperation, accommodation, and overlap. Journalists provided a full range of clandestine services, from simple intelligence gathering to serving as go-betweens with spies in communist countries. Reporters shared their notebooks with the CIA. Editors shared their staffs. Some of the journalists were Pulitzer Prize winners, distinguished reporters who considered themselves ambassadors without portfolios for their country. Most were less exalted, foreign correspondents who found their association with the agency, and on and on and on. You could read it. I highly encourage you to read this in its entirety. It's very, very interesting. But again, this was back, right, during 1950s. Imagine what is happening today. Do you think it's just only foreign anymore? Or do we think maybe there's a lot of domestic working, right? And speaking of domestic, let's go here, right, to this little report that I put this report out back in 2019. So I'm referencing myself here, and you can go back and look at some of the sources I have in the video. But here's just a quick list of who CNN uses for analysts, right? Think about everything I just told you, apply it to now, and think about, and this is back in 2019, think about the people who are being hired as analysts for CNN. James Clapper. Who is he? Director of the National Intelligence under Obama. Andrew McCabe, you've heard that name, former FBI Deputy Director. And CNN announced that he would serve as their law enforcement analyst. James Baker, former FBI General Counsel. Then we have Josh Campbell, here we go, former FBI aide to Comey. Ashad, former FBI Special Agent Stephen Hall, former CIA Moscow Station Chief Phil Mudd, former FBI and CIA officials, and here's what they do. James Galantino here, again, former FBI Supervisory Special Agent. And then we have ones on MSNBC, okay? And these are just two agencies. I didn't even have time to get into the others, right? But John Brennan, former CIA Director. He is now a Senior National Security and Intelligence Analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. Please look this stuff up. You guys, I look up what I'm telling you, but this is all the case. And here's all the others, right? You could see CIA, Naval Chief Petty Officer, former Chief of Staff James Comey, former FBI Assistant Director. Huge. These are major names, not to mention Anderson Cooper. Let's not forget about his relationship, right? Anderson Cooper on his CIA internship. We all know that he did an internship before he decided to go in the media. Now he's in the media with CNN, right? On top of all of that, we have to really consider, with all of these people working with the MSM and the mainstream media, what does that tell us about what's truly happening today? And who do you often see giving advice and input on the media? And why is the media just so happen to always agree with these people, right? To always be on this leftist radical slant, which a lot of them are. And may I suggest, it'd be nice to dig a little deeper on all of this, right? But that's not all. We also have this, and this is on mrc.org. We also have to realize that on top of all of that, you also have George Soros, another leftist radical arm, funding and putting his money in a lot of the mainstream media. He also threw in a lot of media, right? 27 million he spent trying to defeat Bush in 2004. And he has ties to more than 30 news outlets, including, of course, the New York Times, Washington, the AP, NBC, blah, 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 fill in the blank. Why do you think they tell you don't use rational thinking and think for yourself, but to let them tell you what the news is? And here's some of those who are linked, right? You can see New York Times, Boston Globe, Seattle Times, ABC, The Atlantic Journal, Miami Herald. Here's the others, and you can just pause this on your own because I don't want to get into too much of it, but I will leave it in the description box below, right? So if this relationship doesn't get more attention, then the minds of Americans will be purposefully and constantly manipulated by those who are former or in charge or in league with your CIA or FBI, which should only be, the FBI should deal with FBI dealings, not the mainstream media. The CIA should deal with CIA things. But yet, it seems they're infiltrating every aspect of society. Think about what happened with President Trump. They're going to dive massively into his tax returns, but you're not going to have anyone persecuted for a massive spy campaign against the president when all the Russia collusion came back as moot, right? Nothing came of it. So now let's prosecute someone for, I don't know, the PP gate, the Steele dossier, but not anything. They just said, oh, we'll look into it, and nothing happens. Why? Good question. Where are the loyalties lying for these people? But we cannot allow such control over our media, because it really does develop the minds of a lot of people. This is why I encourage you, turn off the mainstream media and get on alternative sites. And if you don't get to Restricted Republic, get somewhere else. Right? That's my heart. If you're not with me, fine. Go check out, some of these other sites that are out there that have information, but you have to start getting your information from elsewhere. Justice Knight and myself do everything we can to get you the real information. And this is how we're able to do what we do, is through Restricted Republic. And again, right now we've got that massive discount, $29 off for the entire first year. And you can get it right now. And by the way, we still have that 14-day free trial. So if you just want to check it out, you can as well. But get on there and make sure you're getting the real nitty-gritty information. Anyhow, I love all of you. Thank you so much for being a part of Lisa Haven here and watching me on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.